Hey everybody, welcome to this behind the scenes look at my latest short film called The Forest Creature. I'll be showing you guys some of the creative and technical processes as well as answering your submitted questions at the end of the video. Firstly, thank you to Lydia Barris for contributing her poetry and reading to the project. I will be playing the video now as I talk through some of the processes and creative thoughts, but I will be muting the audio in it. So I just want to say that you should watch the full video with the audio on the YouTube link to get the best experience. And thank you again to Lydia for contributing. So let's actually play the video now. So this project came about, the idea came about in late December 2020 when I purchased a new computer system with a beefy graphics card, and I wanted to use a new set of tools to push my artworks further. And in particular, I wanted to get into virtual reality and in creating virtual experiences for the Oculus Quest 2, which has become a lot more accessible to everybody. So the way that I like to learn is I like to do short projects, and I feel like this is the best way to learn a new program. Is to create a project from start to finish. Now, there were a couple of criteria that I wanted to achieve, and one of them was to create a complex environment with an organic creature as the main focal point. Time was also a factor. I didn't want to spend months and weeks creating assets, as I knew this was just a test in order for me to learn a new workflow and pipeline. So, having set the sort of technical criteria, I started to brainstorm potential scenarios. And the main inspiration came actually as I looked out the window from my workshop one night. And outside the window, because I live on the second floor, there is a giant old tree. And this tree is inhabited by a ton of creatures, and it's basically a mini ecosystem. So we get possums, magpies, bats, and of course lots of insects. So when I'm at night creating and there's no other sounds, no people, no traffic, it's just the sound of the creatures in trees. It's really interesting and keeps me motivated. So keeps me awake. You get some really weird sounds from possums, I'll tell you. I've got some photos of the tree here that I'd like to show you. Apologies for the mess in my studio. I took these this morning, but it's a pretty big tree. Might not seem that impressive in the photos, but the idea came that I imagined a creature that lives in the tree, watching over me, sending me creative thoughts as I worked, and sort of dreaming and sleeping in the scene. So with that in mind, I got to work, and now I'm going to talk about some of the tools that I used to create the short film. And the tools mainly are Zbrush for the modeling and sculpting, Substance Painter for texturing, Unreal Engine 4.26 for the final lighting and rendering. So basically putting everything together with cameras and rendering out the images you see here. So let's get started. So with the idea set, I started to sketch out in Zbrush, Pixelogic Zbrush, which is a digital sculpting program, modeling program, and it's my preferred tool of choice for creating digital models and sculptures. So this is version 1 of the Zbrush project, and the creature here basically started as a sphere, and I began pulling out bits and sculpting and forming shapes, and here the intention was to create the creature's main forms and get some sort of emotion across, some sort of action across, and you can see here the seed pod, which the creature is sleeping in, hasn't been fully developed yet at this stage. I knew it should be resting comfortably in something like a cocoon or seed pod or something. So that was yet to come. But the creature I had fleshed out, I had started blocking out. Basically, you can sort of tell what this thing is supposed to be already at these early stages. It's got 2 arms and a head, some horns, and a little swirly tail, and lots of organic things, design choices from nature. So this is like the curl of a lizard's tail or fern, and these are like wooden branches for the horns. So let's look at version 2 as we progress. So this took maybe a day and a half, not even that, I'd say a day, to sketch out the idea. As you can see, it doesn't have much detail. So as we progress to version 2, so here you can see I've started pretty much fleshed out the seed pod design, and I've started detailing as well as doing a base texture or the coloring of the creature. So if I just turn off the color, so you can see the design hasn't changed. I've gone in and started refining the shapes and the forms, adding detail, adding skin folds, just resolving some of the design choices that I made earlier in that first version. And of course, I painted up some quick textures for it. So the great thing with Zbrush is that it feels very organic in terms of what you would actually do if you are sculpting and painting a model. You just basically select the color, select the paintbrush, and then just paint. There's no really technical stuff at this point of the conceptual stage. And if we look at the color, it's all very basic, all very hand painted colors. And I also started giving it a little bit of a pose to break the symmetry. Okay, so let's look at version 3. And this probably took another day or so. Okay, so you can see version 3, I've started blocking out a concept frame with some temporary foliage, and this is important for me at this stage to solidify my idea, my concept, and doing this allows me to move ahead because I know, okay, this is gonna, look good. It's a nice framing. It's a nice idea. The scale of the leaves versus the branch is nice compared, with the creature in there. So it's a tiny little creature, sitting in the foliage. So at this stage, it's basically just framing and then rendering out a image from Zbrush, just so I can solidify my idea moving forward. So once that's done, we need to then move on to version 4, which is more of the technical side. So at this, all the stages prior is basically just concepting and sketching. There was no technical requirements since the model was just needed to live inside Zbrush and didn't need to go anywhere else into other programs. So now in version 4 we start getting into the technical side of preparing the model so that it can be exported out into Unreal Engine for the final rendering, which will give us nice, a lot nicer imagery, animations, and lighting. So in order to do that, you sort of have to, I won't get into too much technical details here, but you basically have to turn the sketch model into, which is very high dense polygon model, into a low poly model, and basically bake out the color information and the sculpting, fine detail sculpting information onto texture maps or images. And if we have a look at, as an example, here is the sketch model, and you can see it's made up of tiny little triangles, which is not really suitable for rendering in Unreal Engine. So you need to change that into a low poly version, which is essentially capturing the shape, overall shape, the high and the low of your model, just with less dense information, and the less density information is then being converted into image files or texture maps. So as we step up in levels, you can see that that information is still there, but it's just baked out into texture maps. And to do this, I just used Zbrush's great plugin called ZRemesher, and it's just here, which changed the polygon count from 200,000 to 18,000. In terms of animation and topology of the model, I knew I didn't want the creature to do anything crazy in terms of animation, so the topology of the model using ZRemesher was just perfectly fine for that. But I knew I wanted to give it some animation, a little bit of breathing movement, a little bit of head nodding, etc. So in Zbrush you can create what's called layers, which can be exported out as blend shapes. And I'm just going to load up the project. Okay, so these are the 3 little animation blend shapes that I created, and one is just called a breathing animation. So all I'm doing is just sliding the slider from one state to the other, and it's basically a movement of breathing. And the other one is eye squint, very subtle stuff. But it just gives life to your creature if you don't plan on giving him a full, body rig and doing crazy animations with it. So this one's just a mouth twitch. So that's Zbrush and blend shapes. And once I've got all this done, everything was exported out in an FBX format into Substance Painter for texturing. Alright, so here we have the asset in Substance Painter, and Substance Painter is a texturing program, and it will allow you to texture color, specular, normal, bump, roughness, and it's a great program to add lots of fine detail onto your model. So I won't go through too much technical information here, but what I will do is just show you the before and after, and what you can do in Substance Painter to quickly turn a base texture into something a lot more legit. So if I switch off all the layers here, layer stack, and just show you the base texture that I started with. So this is the base color which I painted in Zbrush. I'm just going to turn off the case. And you can see it doesn't really have much surface detail information on there. It's just very flat, basic colors. And then what you can do is add various materials, and then tweak these materials, and then use mask to control the intensity of these. So this is the first layer, so it's like, if I toggle that on and off, and if we look at the model, and I'm just spinning the light around here by holding down shift and right click. So you can see before, after, and this is the type of stuff you don't really want to sculpt by hand with in ZBrush. These are high frequency detail. It's best done in the texturing using a program like Substance Painter. So that's one layer, and then we have another one. Again, very, very subtle, but all these layers stack up to give you a good final result. Because real organic skin is made up of many different layers. And then another one. So this one was for the horns. So I ended up changing the texture on the horns completely in Substance Painter, and that's pretty easy to do that. So this was more for wood, more like wood basically, old wood. And then some final adjustments, just darkening things and lightening things. And if we just scrub through the map, so that's your color, that's your bump, roughness for your specular highlights. So the lighter the value, the more rough, and the darker, the more glossy. And this is scattering, controlling your subsurface scattering. And this is your normal map with all your details baked out, which gets sent through to Unreal Engine. So Substance is a great tool for visualizing what your final model will look like in Unreal. And it's got nice lighting system that lets you spin things around and lets you render out nice beauty passes. And I'm just going to show you some test renders from Unreal Engine, and you'll see that it came pretty close to what it looked like in Unreal. So these were rendered in Substance using iRay. So, at this stage, this render was, I really liked this, and I knew I was on the right track for what I'm doing in terms of a look development. This was a nice frame. It wasn't completely 100% there, but the idea was there, and it looked nice. It had a good look to it. And just moving further along, and then this is what the final asset looked like rendered in Substance Painter. And the same process was used for the case, the seed pod in the back. So obviously I didn't texture all these blood veins and stuff like that. A material was used, and then I just basically blended out the mask for it. So if we have a look at the case, and I'll just quickly toggle through the stacks. So this is the base texture that I brought in from Zbrush, which I painted. And then the back. This one was for the back. So you can quickly see that it's quite a big difference here in terms of lighting, because we're controlling a lot of the specular highlights here, whereas this original one was just all glossy. And then what else? This one was the veins, which is really cool. So what you can do, so you've got all these materials, and you just basically apply these materials, and you can download materials from a website called Substance Share and Substance Source. And basically these materials are made by other artists and give you interesting controls for color, and you can tweak it and then just mask out where you want these effects to happen. Which just means you don't have to texture all this stuff by hand. And you don't really want to do that unless it's for a very special project. Because at the end of the day, all these details are going to be really, really small. And it's not really going to matter if you use somebody else's material, because they're so small, it just adds visual interest. It's not really a focal point. And as long as you tweak the material, you should be fine. Okay, so that's Substance Painter. And let's move on to the last step, which is putting everything together into Unreal Engine. Alright, so here we are with Unreal Engine 4.26 loaded. And here is my entire scene for the forest creature short. And so as you can see, everything is running crazily awesome in real time. And I'm pretty blown away by this thing. So before we look into detail of Unreal Engine. I just wanted to say that I've just started learning Unreal Engine, so I'm not going to give you guys any technical tips because I'm still learning. But I think it'll be interesting to see, what this Unreal Engine can do. And for those of you that don't know, Unreal Engine is a games development program or games editor used by many AAA games to make games, basically for the Xbox and your PC and your PlayStation. And there are essentially two main games editors out in the market at the moment, and one of them is Unity, and the other one is Unreal Engine. And it's always a toss-up between which one to learn because they are two completely different systems. And basically I'm going to tell you what factors led me to choose Unreal Engine. So the first one is that it's free, basically. So the license agreement is extremely fair, and basically if you're just doing personal projects, you're allowed to create, they'll give you the software for free to create personal projects. And I think it's only if you actually ship a game, like an actual video game, and make over $500,000 in revenue, that's when you have to start paying them to continue access to Unreal Editor, which is what this program's called. And so yeah, that's pretty awesome. The software you get for free is exactly the same as what you would get if you paid for it. So that's definitely a plus. The other selling point for me was that Unreal Engine had a huge amount of learning resources online, and I think that's really important if you're starting to learn a new piece of program. Is that you have access to lots of learning resources, and if you just go onto YouTube and type in how do I use Unreal Engine or Unreal Engine, you'll see thousands of videos. So it's a very popular program, and people like to share information, and I think partly because it's a free program that anybody can download and use. That's why there's so many videos and so many people out there willing to share information for free. So that's a huge plus. And the other thing is that Unreal themselves have an excellent learning library or portal on their website, and it's really comprehensive. So yeah, you basically you can learn everything you want without paying any money. That's awesome. There is a lot, so but that's definitely better than nothing. When I first started out with computer graphics, it was so hard to learn anything because basically nobody was sharing information online, and that was about 15 years ago. So a lot has changed. Another point is that there are lots of third-party resources, plugins, models that you can buy for relatively cheap price if you are wanting to just buy stuff and not make your own. And there's tons of marketplaces for that, and pretty good quality photo from what I've seen as well. And the other one is that I feel like it's artist friendly to me. I tried Unreal maybe about 5 years ago. It was a bit of a mess, but since then the program has completely matured, and it's a lot more user friendly than before. And to create this short film, I haven't had to type in any code or anything like that. Everything's GUI based. Bearing in mind though, Unreal is a bit of a beast, and there's many systems in place. So not having to know code is good, but then you still need to dive through the interface and find things. But yeah, it's pretty artist friendly, and coming from Houdini and Maya, it was pretty logical switch. And the other one was, well, one of the biggest factors was actually I found out that if you use Unreal Engine, you can actually get access to Quixel mega scans for absolutely free to access to their entire library, which usually costs like thousands of dollars. So what's Quixel Megascan? It's basically a company that goes around scanning real world objects and turning them into digital assets. So I'm just going to show you this program called Zbrush, which is basically their catalog of stuff that you can basically download and drag and drop into your scene, into your Unreal scene for free. And these assets are extremely high quality. They get used by lots of visual effects and games companies worldwide. So you can see these are actually, they're not just photos, they're actually 3D files, objects with textures that you can drag into Unreal and spin around and move around. And there's tons of stuff here. I won't go through it all, but have a look at Zbrush or Quixel Megascan, and basically I went through the 3D plant section and downloaded a few of these plants and leaves for my scene, and that's what you see there. They're pretty easy to set up as well, and again, very high quality. So yeah, that's Zbrush, and you get access for free. Access to this for free if you use Unreal Engine. It's pretty awesome. So back into Unreal. So this branch here that you see was from Quixel Megascans, and these leaves were from Megascans as well. And basically I just duplicated a bunch of these different ones and then put them into the scene, laid them out, and you can see I got a whole bunch of these here. But everything you see here is running in real time, and my RTX 3070 is handling it really well. So I'm going to switch into the cinematic viewport. And the great thing with Unreal is that they have built the system in mind for people to create cinematics and short films with. So it's not only is it made for creating games, they've actually considered that maybe people would like to use this for creating short movies. So you can put in a bunch of cameras, and you can see these cameras are from my short film. And everything you see here is all running in real time. So this is not like a pre-rendered video. I can basically get out of here and then zoom into the rest of the scene. It's pretty insane, like, you know, real-time depth of field and ray trace lighting, and yeah, I'm geeking out here, but it's super cool. There's no way you couldn't be able to do this like a couple of years ago. It's nuts. So once you set up all the cameras, you can use this handy tool called a sequencer, and it's basically like an editor. And you can put all your cameras and stuff in this, and then do animations like changing the focal length and the speed of the cameras and everything like that in Unreal, which is pretty awesome as well. It's got its own inbuilt curve editor for editing animations. And let's see, what else am I supposed to say here? So this scene is using real-time ray tracing, real-time shadows, and all these moving leaves, they're actually casting dynamic shadows as well, so there's no baked lighting in the scene. And yeah, it's awesome. Really looking forward to creating more art with this tool. And you know, the idea is that I'll be making virtual reality experiences with this tool, because rendering is so fast now. You basically don't have to wait hours and hours and hours to get something out. It's all real time. It's awesome. Okay, so there you have it, guys. That's more of the technical breakdown, and now I'm going to answer some of the questions that you sent through. Alright, so let me answer some of the questions that were sent through online. Thank you guys so much for sending those questions through. Really appreciate the engagement. So first one is from Amy Jean. Hello. And the question is, what was your inspiration for the creature? So I explained it a little bit at the beginning already, but the creature was inspired by the giant oak tree outside my studio windows. I imagined the creature living in the tree, watching over me create. So I hope that answered that. The second question is from Ben Shannon. Thank you, Ben. And he asks, really enjoy the work. If I may ask, what computer setup are you using? So this new computer, this new workstation that I purchased is a pre-built system by Dell. It's a Dell XPS 8940. I just don't have the patience or the time to build my own computers anymore, so I went with a pre-built one. And the specifications are, it's a i7-8 core, 32 gigs of RAM, and I recommend 32 gigs as a minimum for computer graphics work. It's also got a 1 terabyte SSD and a 2 terabyte normal hard drive. So you store your programs on your SSD, which makes it run faster. And the graphics card is a RTX 3070, and that's really important if you want to use ray tracing in Unreal Engine. You need to have one of the new RTX series graphics cards. And I also have a dual monitor setup. So just a note regarding system specifications. Zbrush doesn't require a high-end graphics card. It doesn't require a graphics card at all. The inbuilt one usually is fine, but Zbrush does require a really good CPU and lots of RAM. So if you're planning just to do ZBrushing, then don't spend a ton of money on a graphics card. Put that money into a good CPU and lots of RAM. Whereas if you are planning to do real-time stuff and texturing, then Substance Painter and Unreal Engine both require a good graphics card to run properly. So it's a trade-off, and I felt that my investment into this workstation was a good one, covered both grounds. The final question is from Sean Kaysen. Thank you, Sean. First question he asked is, what did you use and how did you composite? So everything was rendered straight from Unreal Engine, as I showed you. Everything was put together inside that program, and basically I rendered out some MP4 video files from the cameras and loaded them into Adobe Premiere for editing and adding the sound effects, soundtrack, and the poetry, etc. Okay, second question is, what gave you the idea for this? So I've already explained at the beginning of the video, but You know, the other thing is that I wanted to test out my new workstation and try out Unreal Engine for you know, further works into artworks into virtual reality. So, third question: any particular thoughts processes when you design the creature? Is there a backstory to this life form? The creature was inspired by the giant tree outside my studio window. And last question is: any recommendations, tips for practical sculptors or traditional sculptor who wants to dip their toes into digital? It's a long one, but I'll try and make it short. So Zbrush has several light versions available that you can dip your toes into digital sculpting, and one of them is called Zbrush Core Mini, which is free to download and use. It's got a limited tool set, but with that you should be able to get a feel if you like digital sculpting or not. It doesn't have the complicated interface that the Big Brother full ZBrush has, basically. There are also other sculpting programs for tablets, and I've heard good things about both Forger and Nomad Sculpt. I haven't used any of them before, but I've seen some pretty good work being done with them, for sketching anyway. And you know, to start learning, I recommend finding an artist that has a similar style and aesthetic as yourself, and learning from them. And if they have paid tutorials available, then invest in those. The reason being is that ZBrush has many sides, and everybody has a different workflow on how they work. If you find somebody that has a similar style as you, then they already have developed a streamlined workflow to get from A to B. And if you're making similar things, then they will be the best person to learn from. Otherwise, yeah, you're just going to be running around learning all different bits and pieces and then trying to put them together, and they might not fit. So find somebody that find a sculptor that you like online that uses ZBrush, and hopefully they have tutorials available, and then look at how they create their work. And I also recommend watching speed sculpts online by artists that create similar work as you, and because generally speaking, when people are doing speed sculpts in ZBrush, they don't tend to get into the technical stuff as much. It's just basically, here's a ball, here's how I turn the ball into a creature, you know, something like that. So there's no technical hurdles in between to get from A to B if you're watching just speed sculpt videos. So they're always interesting to watch. And okay, so this is the end of my Q&A and a look behind the scenes of how I created the short, The Forest Creature. If you haven't seen the film yet, please go watch it on YouTube or Facebook. You're missing out on nice rendered HD video, as well as a poetry reading that goes along with this short film by Lydia, and you can find the links. You can find the link here, actually. There you go. So that is the YouTube link, and please go and watch it. It's only a few minutes long. And lastly, thank you everybody for watching this making of. I think it's turned into a pretty long video, so I apologize. But I hope that answered your questions, and I look forward. Actually, I've got lots and lots of cool stuff planned for the rest of the year. And I usually do more dark art stuff, darker style art. So believe me, I will have the dark stuff coming very shortly. I think this Forest Creature was a great starter example, starter project, and yeah, you only get better from now on. Okay, thanks for watching guys. Take it easy.